Hi everyone, Sid here. Ooh, it's been over a week. I'm really sorry about that. I have a new gig at work. My schedule isn't as regular as it used to be. I've actually shaved twice without filming myself. And I gotta say, it feels kind of weird shaving with my mirror like this instead of having it like this. But I'm really glad. I don't want to get used to shaving myself like that. I'm filming another video, just getting back to publishing. Today's video is going to be a little scattered. I don't have that much preparation, but I wanted to get back into the flow of things. Today's lather will be supplemented by tea tree oil and patchouli. So, before I get started, I want to say I'm really happy with the last video. I think there are two things, there are two signs that let me know when an internet project is getting some traction. One of them is when your friends start sending you links to things that might interest you on that topic, and the other is when strangers are interacting and stuff like that. So I'm really happy. You can keep sharing your stamp collections on the other video. I will get to commenting on them, but my priority right now is producing new content. So, today's video, I would like to talk about the 3 aspects of liberty. This is something I picked up on the School Sucks podcast. I forget, they were visiting some Montessori school or something like that. And I found it really interesting. I don't think most people are aware of this. If you don't have all 3 aspects of liberty, you're not truly free. Now, the first 2 are going to be obvious, but the third one isn't going to be so obvious. So I'll try to make it as clear as I can. So I'll just name the first 2 and then I'll elaborate on them and then go into the last one. So the first freedom is freedom of thought, and then you have freedom of action. So freedom of thought, it's kind of obvious. You have the right to think what you want to think whenever you want to think it. And the thing with the freedom of thought is that it can never be taken away. At worst, someone can trick you into forfeiting your freedom of thought. And I thought about this earlier. Another thing, sometimes through thought habits, you can kind of atrophy away some aspects of your freedom of thought. But the good news with regards to that is that, well, for freedom, if someone's tricked you into forfeiting your freedom of thought, as soon as you know what's up, you're basically free again in that regard. Freedom that you've atrophied away, that kind of takes some work. I'm still working on some issues with regards to that. I think we all are. But that's the first aspect of liberty. Now, freedom of action, it's kind of obvious too. I mean, if you're not free to act according to your thoughts, you're not truly free. That one is the really external, obvious kind of coercion, because examples of removing your freedom of action is putting you in a cage, putting you in handcuffs, drugging you, threatening you if you do certain things, things that typical cops do in their law enforcement capacity. And that there's no obvious answer to it, because if you're in a situation where you're being coerced externally and your freedom of action is taken away, there's no silver bullet, one size fits all solution to that. It depends on the situation, but at least it's kind of obvious that you're in that situation, so you can think of whatever solution to get yourself free in that regard. So, the third freedom isn't that obvious, but I'll name it and go into it, and hopefully it'll make sense. The third freedom is the freedom to bear the full consequences of your actions. So, in the positive sense, part of that would be like, let's say I found a company and the company makes billions. I should be free to have all those billions and do with it as I please. If I'm smart, I'm going to use those millions. I forget if I said millions or billions, so let's say millions. If I'm smart, I'm going to use those millions to pay my employees well and give nice kickbacks to my investors and even my clients, which is ultimately where my money comes from, my clients and my investors. And in the negative sense, and this is where people can get tangled, if, let's say, I buy a house and I don't insure it and the house burns down, true freedom involves me dealing with the full consequences of not having insured my house. So, the thing with freedom of consequences, and this is why so many people get tangled up. I'll start with the negative aspect. So people often talk about social safety net or that kind of thing. That's all nice and all, and I'll go more on that in a second. But the bottom line is, if you're using a coercive monopoly to set up and implement this social safety net, first of all, it's going to work like shit. More on that in my video on risk management. Again, so many videos boil down to my video on risk management because the art of living successfully is risk management plays a huge part in that, which is why when it's not done in a proprietary way, it's going to suck over time. So yeah, anyway, if you rely on a coercive monopoly to set up this safety net, not only is it going to suck, but you're not being generous. Again, I've covered this in a prior video too. If you donate confiscated money to charity, you're not being generous in that moment because it's not your damn money and it wasn't obtained morally to begin with. So no matter what happens after the fact, it doesn't erase the moral wrong that took place initially. So, where was I with this? Yeah, basically, if you're relying on a coercive monopoly to ensure a social safety net, it's gonna suck, and you're not being generous. And the thing is, and I know Stefan Molyneux's made this point a couple times, and I think it's great. Sometimes. And that's the beauty of letting people be free to bear the full consequences of their actions, both good and bad. Sometimes the cool thing about letting people just get the full consequences is that they can serve as a warning to others. So if let's say Joe buys a house and doesn't purchase fire insurance, and he tries to his house catches fire and he tries to get fire insurance for his house that's already burning down, and naturally the insurance company refuses because it's a pre-existing condition, so they're not going to insure that shit. Things that would kind of force the insurance company to take take Joe on as a client would eliminate the possibility of like people knowing about Joe and saying, "Hey, did you hear what happened to Joe? He bought a house and he didn't insure it, and his house burned down." Now, I know that some of you are cringing at that, but I want to point something out. It's that first of all, in a voluntary society, Joe would have access to charity after the fact. I know this because, as I mentioned in my video on the poor is always the first thing people ask about. So I know people care about the poor. I also know how dangerous it is to talk about the poor like that. But one thing is for sure, in a voluntary society, Joe would be taken care of in that situation. And the mechanism that would the mechanism that would help people out like Joe would, since you would have a proprietary interest, you're quite certain that they won't end up subsidizing child abuse, as I mentioned in that video. If they want to stay in business in the long term, they're certainly not, or they're going to do everything they can to avoid that. So the money goes to Joe and not the alcoholic who drinks his money away and comes up with this story about how, oh, my house burned down and all that shit. So, and the other thing is, and this is why so many people fall into the trap, is because it's an enticing idea to be able to fuck up without bearing the consequences of your fuck ups, which is why in a democracy, politicians have a strong tendency to bribe us with that and saying like, you know, vote for me and you can fuck up as much as you want and I'll be there for you, that kind of thing. Sadly, the bottom line is, if you don't have all three aspects of liberty, you're not truly free. So the person who is offering to protect you from the consequences of your actions, as opposed to helping you out after you've fucked up, the difference looks subtle on the surface, but it's pretty important, because the person who's offering to protect you from the consequences of your bad choices is enslaving you in a pretty subtle way that's difficult to detect, and it can lead to all sorts of problems down the line. And there are other problems with democracy. I'm gonna shoot a video on that eventually once I've organized my thoughts enough. But the bottom line is, you can't bribe people with their own money before going into debt, without going into debt. And that's why we have things like national deficits, this euphemism for stealing from the unborn. And yeah, so basically, if you don't have all three aspects of your freedom of thought, freedom of action, freedom of consequence, the full consequence of your actions, you're not truly free, and it's very tempting to be enticed by some silver-tongued liar who bribes you with the possibility of being able to fuck up all you want and be scot-free and not even have to hit bottom before really realizing what your choices mean. So yeah, I think that's about it. I think if I tried to elaborate more, I'd ramble even more than I've been for the last couple minutes. So thank you very much for watching this video. You can please like and subscribe on YouTube. You can put comments below. I know that it's kind of scattered, but I hope this made sense. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at SidRockMTL. So thank you very much. I'll see you very soon. And as I said before, as long as I'm doing this 2 or 3 times a week, I'm happy. And yeah, I'll probably release this tomorrow, which is Thursday, so I gotta get cracking. So you take care.